Welcome back to another edition of Wonderful Wednesdays with Wendy. I am your host, Wendy Wotecki. Welcome. I am the Parent Support Connector here at Mission Empower. We are a federally funded nonprofit. Our job is a community parent resource center in Erie County, and we strive to bring you current and important information that can help you and your family. Today, I have Martine with me from Family Services of Northwestern, Pennsylvania, and we are going to talk very specifically about foster care, being a foster parent and respite care, and how and what you can do to get involved with that process, because it's very important and needed in our community. So welcome, Martine.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So Martine, what is your title and job description over at Family Services?
So I am the foster parent recruiter and trainer at Family Services. So I am trying to get more people to kind of understand how they could become foster parents and get them started along that. And then I also make sure that in addition to the training that people need to become foster parents, that we also are adequately equipping our already established foster parents along the way so that they know what they need to do. If they're struggling with something, I try to, tailor something right to them, and just make sure that everybody is having all of the support that they need in order to, thrive as a family.
That is a big job, because I have shared before, but my husband and I have been foster parents for many years. I believe we saw up to 47 children go through our home in a quick amount of time. I believe we were foster parents for about 5 years, and I adopted 2 of those children. So it is something that's very close to my heart and something that I'm passionate about. So when somebody comes to you and they're like, I think I want to give this a try, I think I want to become a foster parent. Now, first of all, I know you're like, yay. But what do you do? What's the first thing? How does your process work?
So the first thing that we start with is just a conversation. In pre-COVID times, we would meet face to face. Right now, we're doing an awful lot of things, kind of on Zoom and Teams and things like that, just so that everybody is, feeling comfortable and safe. And we're just kind of talking through, okay, are you thinking about it? Have you been thinking about it for a while? Are you like, I'm all on board, or are you still trying to kind of understand what it might be? It's because I want to meet people where they're at. If they're just sort of thinking like, my husband and I, or I've been thinking about this or whatever, then I don't want to like jump in and dive and be like, oh, here's all the paperwork and here's a bunch of training, because that's overwhelming. The process can feel overwhelming. The thing about it is, though, that there's no like time frame. It's not like you'll have to, hurry and get it done in a certain period of time. We want people to come to this when they're feeling comfortable. So for a lot of people, it's starting off with a conversation and dispelling some myths, things that they maybe saw on TV or movies or heard about from friends, or just, kind of came up with on their own, and were concerned about and wanted to, just see, okay, kind of try it on mentally. Like, what would it look like if I were going to do this? Here are some things I'm really scared of. Or sometimes we'll have people who will come in and they'll say like, I'm on board, but some of my kids are really scared or nervous. And so I'll sit down with the kiddos and we'll have like a family meeting, or, a time for whether it's teenagers or younger, if they, have questions or want to talk about what their concerns are or what it would look like for them. I want to be sure that I'm answering all of that. So the first thing we're going to start with is just some information. We're going to be talking about what our program looks like, what expectations that they might have for us, what expectations we have of our foster parents. And then if people are, saying, yeah, I really want to do this, then we'll just kind of get them started.
Okay, so we're talking about dispelling some myths about foster care. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things really quickly. So, do you have to be in a married, heterosexual relationship to be a foster parent? Is that the only requirement?
Absolutely.
Or is that a myth?
That is a myth. I feel like we should have a little bubble that pops up that goes, myth. It is actually a really big myth. And I'm glad that you kind of started there, because no, You do not need to be heterosexual. You do not need to be married. You do not need to be co-parenting with somebody. We have plenty of people who are a whole different, mix of those things. So we have a number of single people or people who are kind of not there. They might be committed to somebody, but they may or may not be even living with them. We have people who are a co-parenting household. They've got two people in there. They may be of the same gender. They may be of different genders. We have married couples. We've had single people who are like, well, I'm kind of in the process of a divorce. Do I have to be completely divorced first? And the answer is no. We want to be sure that, you're in kind of a stable place, and that things are not super up in the air for you, just because we don't want to put a child into a situation where everything's up in the air and contentious. But outside of that, there is no one way a family looks, because there's no one right family. People often worry though about that, what if I'm a single parent? Could I be a single dad? Absolutely. You could be a single mom, you could be a single dad, you could be, any number of married, partnered, not, you can have kids already, or sometimes people have never had children of their own. They've never parented directly children in their household. That's fine.
That's amazing. And your religion does not matter either. So we need to get rid of all those things off the table and just understand that you're just trying to provide a loving home. And we talked briefly earlier about sometimes when a child's coming from a single parent home, it's really beneficial for them to be in a single parent foster home as well, because that is normalcy to them. So that's why it's okay if you are a single person household to try.
Yeah. The other couple of myths, if you don't mind me saying, just in terms of, people sometimes worry that if they don't have someone who stays home, you can be a working parent, you can be a working single parent, you can have both parents work. That's completely fine. A lot of our kiddos are just, they're in school, they're in daycare, whatever. It would mean that you couldn't necessarily take on a child who was so little, like right from the hospital, where it takes a few months before they're able to go to a daycare. On the other hand, if you work for a company that's big enough to fall under the Family Medical Leave Act, you can take unpaid leave to be able to stay home, just like, for the placement of a foster child, or to take care of them, just like you could for a child that you gave birth to. So there's things that we can kind of help people to understand what their rights are as a foster parent too. The other thing is that there's not a certain age that you have to be. We have people who are more retired. We have young people, and everywhere in between. You need to be over 21, but outside of that, as long as you are physically and mentally capable of caring for a child, we don't care how old you are. Sometimes retired people can, make awesome foster parents because they've got a lot of free time to be able to drive to appointments and, do things like that. And they're sometimes very laid back, and they were like, oh yeah, give me the kids, it's fine. So you're not too old to be a foster parent, as long as you're physically capable of doing it.
Great for those medically fragile kids, so that needs so much extra hands on. Yes, I agree. In my experience and time in foster care, those were some really great parents, the retired sector. So what is required? I know there's some training. I know I went through some training. So let's talk about the training real quick so we can debunk some myth there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we don't just throw people right into the mix. It's really important to us that people understand about the system, about kind of the lives that these children may have gone through, that they have a good understanding of the toll that it might take on the family. And so things that they want to be kind of prepared for, as well as just, there's a different way you kind of need to parent a traumatized child. So if you are parenting a child that you've given birth to, and that you guys have not been through significant trauma, you may say like, oh, I got this parenting thing down pat, I know exactly how to do it. But then you have a child who comes from maybe a dysfunctional family, or a lot of abuse, or has just endured a lot of trauma. even just being removed from their family of origin is a traumatic experience. And so sometimes those, instincts, the things that, maybe, oh, I raised my kids doing this, sometimes those things don't work really well. So we want to kind of help people to understand trauma and to, from a trauma-informed standpoint, understand how they can best support those kids and help them to feel confident and to, become the kind of, self-assured, self-actualized kids that they can be. So yeah, we have a training class that is an 11-week class. We call it PATH, which stands for Parents as Tender Healers. It is 33 hours of training, so it sounds like a lot, but it's only like, 3 hours a week. So it's like a once a week class. The great thing about it is, yes, you get that information, but you also have the community of other parents who are also going through this. So you kind of, you can create those bonds, you can kind of bounce things off of each other. Sometimes people will say, oh, I was in foster care when I was a child. Here are some of my experiences. Other people will say, oh, when my grandchild was going through this or whatever. So there's, I think, a really wealth of knowledge that people bring into PATH as well, not just from the facilitators, but you have, that conversation, I think, goes a long way. And then, so we do those trainings. People need to go through the mandated reporting training, just like, pretty much everyone who works with kids at this point has to do. It's that state certified training, understanding, that they are mandated reporters of child abuse. We also ask our people to do a training in first aid. So they don't need to be CPR certified, but we need them to understand some first aid things, as well as a training about reasonable and prudent parenting, which was an act that went through. It's a law, so it's just kind of helps people, again, further understand maybe what their role is as a foster parent, things they can do, things that they can't necessarily. One of the big changes, maybe even since you were a foster parent, is that with this new law that came into place in the I guess in the early 2000s, you're able to leave children, make some parenting decisions. So you can have kids go to like sleepovers at their friends' houses. You can decide that you're going to leave kids with like your aunt for the night as a babysitter while you go to a movie, and you don't have to have those people cleared already through, OCY. You can just sort of make, again, like a parenting decision. You can sign kids up for like soccer and things like that without having to go through, some of those more official channels. And I tell you, just being able to have like, say yes to kids going to like their friend's house after school to work on a school project, that has created so much more normalcy for foster kids that unfortunately didn't used to be the situation.
Now, that makes me so happy to hear that, because I remember very specifically having to go to court over a haircut. So, and getting judge permission to get a haircut and whatnot. So, no, that is really good. I had no idea. So that's a new law for me.
Yeah. And there's still some big things, like you can't have the kids' ears pierced.
Right.
You can't baptize them into a religion. Like there's parameters. But I think just that day-to-day living stuff. And that, I think that also is one of those myths that is grounded in truth, as in that's how it used to be. But if you're only listening to those stories, you might be like, oh, I don't know, that sounds kind of overwhelming. Like talk it out. We'll go through all of that. So yeah, so the training is really important, so that people just have an accurate idea of what to expect.
Yes. And then I know, personally speaking, when I went through my training, I was not able to have children naturally. And so we were looking to foster for a while, and then eventually work into fostering to adopt. We wanted to see what the universe was like. But I got to meet a lot of other women that were in the same situation as myself. And we're still friends today. And it's been 18, 20 years. So your foster parent community is actually really tight, and they tend to do things together in groups. You have a lot of support that is phenomenal. So I want to debunk a myth about something that I know holds back a lot of people also, is home studies. What is a home study? Lay it on me. Tell me what it is, and we'll talk about it.
Okay. So a home study sounds really scary. And this is basically the process that we go through to certify somebody as a foster parent. It involves background checks. So things like your child line clearance, your FBI fingerprints, the state police, your local police. So if you live in, for example, if you live in Mill Creek, we need to get Mill Creek police to tell us if you've been in trouble there. We also just in general look at, we ask you for 5 references. So we say like they can be neighbors, they can be a couple of family members, they can be friends, but we want to be able to talk to some people who know you about how you respond to stress, what some of your strengths are, how you relate to children, and if they were in charge of a child's welfare, would they be comfortable putting that child with you? Generally speaking, of course, I don't know that I've ever had somebody say no. I mean, like if I, so, it's, you tell us who your people are. It's not like we're digging through your past to find your ex-boyfriend who hates you or whatever. But you just let us know. We also are looking at, what your home is like, not just the physical environment, but like how do you guys react? How do you, do you go to work all day? Do you stay home? How do you balance things? How do you balance your work and your home life? Do you have other kids in the house? Are they okay with this whole thing? Have you, who are your supports? How have you reached out for support in the past? Maybe that's, formally, like to a therapist, or you were in the WIC program, or you've, utilized special education for some kids that you've been raising. Or maybe it's informally. Maybe it's like, oh, I went through a divorce and I moved back in with my parents for a little bit and they kind of helped me get on my feet. Or, I am, really turned to my church or my faith community to help get me through some stuff. So we kind of want to know how those things play in. We also have paperwork like everybody does. But we definitely try to help people out with their paperwork.
Right.
We'll say, all right, well, let's work on this one now. Okay, let's try this one. And we just want to, again, be able to document that, prove to the state that we have really vetted our parents as safe people.
So let's talk about that real quickly too, because I know you have to do the FBI fingerprinting.
Yes.
And I do not want to discourage that. It doesn't necessarily mean a hard no, right? Depending on what pops positive on the fingerprinting.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that people understand that there's definitely hardcore no's, but
there are. Yeah, you don't have to have a pristine life. And really, I think that is probably overarchingly something that people imagine, that they have to be perfect people, perfect parents, have all the answers. They have to have a huge house. You don't even have to own a house. Like, you can be renting. That's fine. So yeah, you can have gone through some stuff. You can have had hard times, but I want to see how you have moved on from that, what you've learned from that, what strengths you've gained. And honestly, some of that might be how you relate really well to the parent or to the kids. You might kind of understand, maybe you have an addiction in your past. That's okay. We just need to know that, you're in a good place now and you have some supports. So there are some absolute no's in terms of, your criminal history. Obviously, crimes against children, murder, a lot of, kind of those great big ones that you would think would flash, like, they do. A lot of those felony convictions for those things. However, if it is, there are some drug offenses that only go back like 5 years. So if it's, there are certain things specifically that it's like, oh, well, it's, that was 15 years ago or whatever. So depending on how long ago it was, it's not It's not that hard and fast no. So I would say definitely if you're thinking of it, but you're like, oh, I know I have a conviction for XYZ in my past, talk to us, reach out and run it by us, because we may be able to really quickly reassure you about that. I actually have a family right now that we were able to certify, and they've got a little baby in there right now. He's 4 months old. Cutest people, well, cutest baby. I happen to love the people. I wouldn't necessarily call them cute because the guy's a little bit like rugged, and I think he might get offended if I called him cute. But but I adore them. And he came from a really rough life growing up, and then, was starting to follow some of those patterns. And it took him being in the military and, kind of turning his life around, and then dealing with the complex PTSD and, head traumas, the TBIs, and just realizing what his limits were, as well as just understanding, oh, okay, this is where my trauma is, and this is where I need to be because of it. And he processed through a lot of it. And so when he first arrived, they said, listen, I don't even know if we're going to be able to do this. Let me just show you his criminal history. And it was like very first conversation I'm having with somebody, and they're like slapping down dockets in front of me. And that's fine. And I looked through it and I was like, you know what, we can work with this. And it did mean that there were a couple of other documents that we needed to secure just to, again, prove on paper what we already could tell, which was that, yeah, they're stable. Yeah, this is okay. This is something they've grown past, and frankly is a better person than he was having gone through it. So yeah, let us know what happened, and chances are, we're going to be able to roll with it. You don't have to be perfect.
Speaking about perfect, and we're going to roll into this next, is your house. I know foster families and foster parents that will drive themselves insane over that home study, repainting, remodeling even. I am not kidding you. So that the home is pristine, perfect for that home study. So that's not necessarily, as important, right? Like, you're looking for running water. It's clean. It could be lived in. It could be lived in, right?
It can absolutely be lived in.
No better homes and gardens.
No, I mean, if you have a Martha Stewart house, like that whole Pinterest perfect thing, that's great.
God love you. God love you.
Yeah, I don't. That's fine. But we're looking for safety things for the majority of it. Yeah, do you have clean running water? If you have a well, we have to test the water just to make sure that it passes, that it doesn't have, grossies in it. And if it does, then shock your well. Chances are that's going to take care of it. We'll talk to you about it. But so we want to be sure that, yeah, you have hot and cold running water, you have indoor plumbing, toilets that flush, that you have a refrigerator and a stove, fire extinguisher, smoke detectors, and a carbon monoxide detector. Mm-hmm. We want to know that your house doesn't have like exposed wiring or things that would be a safety hazard like that. You can't have rooms that the children are going to be in, that if like their bedroom can't be in like an unheated attic or an unheated basement or like a shed out back. I don't think that most people are going to put a kid in a shed out back, but whatever. It's on the list. I need to know that if you have firearms in your house, you can have firearms. I just need to be sure that they're locked up appropriately, so that you have to be able to get through 2 different locks to be able to make the gun operable, so that you put ammo and gun together. You have to get through 2 different locks. Outside of that, people, as long as they have legal, these firearms are legal, it's fine if they have that in their home. Some people get really worried about that. Other people worry about like the kind of dog they have. You can have a pit bull. Please have a pit bull. I love them. They're wonderful, and I get to smush their little faces. If your dog is aggressive or mean and has a bite history, that's maybe a little bit of a problem, obviously, to put a child in that situation. But if you just have a family dog and they're they're just a friendly dog, great. I don't care what breed they are. They do need to be up to date on their rabies, and have that kind of history again, just in case, because even the most well-behaved dog, they play and they play with their mouths, and my goodness, I have scars all over myself. I have a 7-month-old puppy and I have scars all over myself right now. So but you can have cats, you can have dogs, you can have lizards. All of that stuff is fine. We want to know in the home, do you have space for children? Do you have like a room? Do you have beds? Do you have, things like that? Children cannot share beds, but they can share bedrooms. So as long as they're not of, of different genders, once they're over like the toddler age, we need them to be in separate gendered bedrooms. But you can have, stick some bunk beds in there. That's absolutely fine. Babies under 1 year old need to be in your bedroom with you, just from a safety standpoint for, in the night, just to be sure that there's no, if they were to, God forbid, stop breathing, that, you would maybe have just that tiny little bit more of a chance of noticing that there was a problem. But outside of that, does your house have hot and cold running water? Is it heated? It doesn't have to have air conditioning. If you've got screens on the windows that you open all the time, do you have a way out? Those are the things we're worried about. And no, it does not have to be perfectly remodeled. You can have an old avocado colored kitchen, or, that avocado and orange or whatever it is that we did in the 70s for reasons I don't know. You can have, carpeting, you can have hardwood, you can have tile, it doesn't matter. A lot of people, you're right, will say like, oh, wait, I want to refinish the kitchen before we do this. If that's important to you, go ahead, but I don't need it. I need to know that you have enough cups and plates and forks and stuff that people can eat. They don't have to be fine china. They don't have to be amazing. I just need to know that you have them and you have enough of them. You don't have to have your own washer and dryer. If you go to the laundromat, that's fine. So yeah, people, I think, worry a lot about the home study. You don't need fresh painted walls. It just needs to be, it needs to be a safe, comfortable environment. That's it.
Right, because, I always thought that my job when we had our foster kids with us was just to show them a loving, stable environment, because sometimes that's their only opportunity to see that. And hopefully you're implanting that idea in their head so they have something to strive towards. Because sometimes, even though kids go back, I've had multiple kids come back and forth, parents try, but for kids to know that they're trying is good, but to know that there's other steps they can work towards as they grow up is really good. Those were awful days when the kids went back. For me, it was always a bad day because I hated seeing them going. I was glad for them, because the reunification, but it was different. So, of course, there are other things that complicate things as a foster parent, such as lots of doctor's appointments. And sometimes you get to go to those things and have exposure to birth families. So let's talk about that, because I know that is a hard realm when you're a foster parent, because obviously it's not the greatest situation for the birth families. And so how do you help families work through that portion? Because that's a big part of your training and learning and understanding.
It is. And I think that, it's normal to have worry about that, but it's also normal to have some maybe negative feelings towards certain birth parents. We love these kids, right? That's your job, is to have them come in and be part of your family and join your table, and, you love them and you give them that love. And so to see somebody who, maybe was not in a place where they were able to prioritize that child's needs, or maybe they even, actively hurt that child, that's a hard place to be. But what our children need is for us to be able to balance that relationship, because they don't need you, ragging on their parents. That's not going to help anything. That's just going to create more division. The goal is always from the get-go for those parents to be able to do the certain things, to be able to be reunified.
Right.
I know, and we'll talk about maybe in a second, that one thing that I think holds people back is the worry of that hurt. They'll like, oh, I'll love them and then I'll give them back and it'll hurt. So we'll maybe put a pin in that one, but I want to answer your question directly, which is that, you should have good boundaries with people. If you're there with the birth parent and they want you to be their very best friend and they're like, oh, this is going to be great, and then I can come over all the time and I can see them, even more than I normally would. No, we need to keep good boundaries. We need to follow the directions of the caseworker and of the court and everything. But I think just having compassion for the idea that, on some level, these parents really love their kids and they maybe aren't in a position to be able to keep them safe or to be able to parent them directly. But I don't think anybody wakes up and goes, you know what, I think I'm going to have a kid so that I can get that kid taken away from me and I can, go through this process. That's really not where people are at. So just understanding that, they may not be able to care for that child, but that doesn't mean they don't love them. They may have different priorities, especially if there's addiction going on, but that they still have a really important role in that child's world. Maybe not their day-to-day life, but their whole world. They are an important person. Maybe they'll be able to, you just kind of keep it a little bit professional and keep it like child-centered, and you avoid arguing or digging at them or saying anything negative, and you're just like, we're here for the kid, let's put those things aside and be here for the common goal, the common good. And I think that's probably the best way you can do it. Maybe even if you end up adopting that child, if you have kept a positive enough relationship, then maybe that parent can have a limited role in that child's life. They can, send cards, or they can call, or they can have, some sort of relationship with them that isn't that primary parenting relationship, but still kind of fulfills for that child in a safe way, having, an idea of who that person is.
Very good. So let's go back to the push pin, because those are bad days. If you are a good foster parent and you are just showing them all the love and support and stability you can, those are hard days. That hurts when they go back. However, I know personally speaking, the goal was, while they were in my care, to do the very best to show them loving, nurturing environments and lots of support and care. So let's talk about people that are afraid or have a misconception about the pain that they will feel.
So I think one of the things is that if you're worried that you're going to love the kids so much that it's going to hurt, that probably means that you have the right kind of heart to be a foster parent.
Yes.
Honestly.
Exactly.
It is going to hurt, and it's supposed to hurt. But at the same time, I think that the scarier thing for me is not that you have an adult who's going to hurt, but that you have a child who's never experienced that strong love and that kind of care and attention. And as you were saying, Wendy, they may not have had that kind of feeling before, that family feeling that, oh, I can be supported and this is what healthy relationships look like. And it's something that can imprint on them, and then they can seek that out. Maybe not as a child with their birth family, but maybe as they look to kind of form their own relationships when they're older. They can know, oh, wait, I know what that's supposed to feel like. It's not always that this is just what it is to me to be an adult or to be in a family. There's another way that things can be and things can feel, and I want that. Sometimes people are able, as foster parents, to maintain a relationship even once they're reunified, or if they move on to be adopted in another home, another family. They can still have some connection and some role. And if you think about it, you've got a child who just has all these extra people loving them. That's fantastic. what a great thing, you know, it's like adding to that village. But I do think that being realistic about the fact that, you know, you can be happy for the child being reunified and still grieve not having them in your life. You can sometimes even be relieved that they're maybe not in your day-to-day life. You might feel like, oh, I'm kind of
That
glad
one was
that
hard.
that one was hard, right? Or even, you know, if you've got like a real little baby, and then you're like, oh, I can sleep through the night now. This is kind of nice. You know, you can still feel those conflicting, like, I can be kind of happy about it, but I miss them. Maybe you're even worried about them. I mean, I think that that's fair too. To be kind of concerned and say like, oh, I really hope they're going to be okay. As you mentioned, unfortunately, some kids do come back through foster care. You might get them again. So, and it's hard, but again, I think that what you're giving them and what they give you is so worth it.
Absolutely. And that's what I found is I learned a lot from the children as well. And we only did it for, I think, the 4 or 5 years before we adopted our 2 children. And my 4-year-old was like, I'm done. So we were like, okay. He couldn't handle the kids going back because he's such a softie. So that's when we went and we were done. But we should have done respite. So, but we didn't at the time. So what is respite care and what does that mean?
So respite care is basically if you have, if you're a foster parent, you need a break sometimes. And honestly, sometimes the kids need a break from you. I mean, let's just be honest here. Sometimes they need a break too. And so respite is a chance. There's formal and informal, but you're kind of referring to formal respite. Informal respite might be like, oh my gosh, you're going to my mom's for the afternoon because I can't. I need to sit here or fold this laundry without someone unfolding it for me the entire time. But formal respite is when that child might go for a weekend, maybe just a night, maybe a week with another family who is also certified as a foster family. And that way you kind of get a break. The family, you know, gets an opportunity to experience this child. And the child gets, you know, a different kind of, you know, experience as well. So foster families who are saying like, I don't want to take this on full time, but I'd be willing to do respite. We absolutely need those people too. And so you go through the same trainings. You just don't have permanent placements. You're just sort of there for the, you know, oh, you know, you need a break here and there, or you're going to take a salsa class with your boyfriend on Thursdays. So I'll take the kid then, or
family vacation, and you don't necessarily want to take the whole gaggle. You want to create, connect with your little pod. You know, I mean, that's okay.
It is. It's okay to take, you know, take family vacations where you take the kids too. You know, you can take them camping, you can take them to Florida, you know, you need to get permission if you're crossing state lines and stuff, and we need to know where the kids are, but you can absolutely do those things. But then sometimes you have situations where, yeah, you need to reconnect with your family, like you said, your little pod. You know, maybe that's a you know, just the adult sort of thing, or you know, you need to take a kid to college, and doing that and running after the little foster one at the same time is going to be a little too much. Maybe, you know, heaven forbid, if you're experiencing with a family member out of town who's very, very sick, or they're passing, and you need to, you know, be able to go and be there for them, and you need that little time then. I mean, that's another time that people would take respite. But I think sometimes people worry that it's like, oh, well, I'm saying I can't do it, or I'm saying I need help. There's nothing wrong with saying you need help. You need help, you need help. That's fine. We encourage people, you know, it's like how you need to take your vacation days from work. You know, you need to have that time for yourself. So it's absolutely, if people are thinking that, you know, they'd like to do it, but they don't want to kind of do it as a total, you know, taking on a placement, there's absolutely a role for you in that way as well.
Yes, a very needed role. So, Martine, how do people get a hold of you if they are interested in having this discussion and opening the door to having the discussion about being a respite care provider, which is a great way to get your feet wet or to be a foster parent? How do they get a hold of you?
You see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So this is, I will include the link, but basically if you go to Family Services of Northwest PA, so fsnwpa.org, you can kind of click through and you'll find, that you can get to us. So down under permanency, and you get over to foster care services. And then you just scroll down, and this goes through some of the requirements about being able to pass your clearances, be free from communicable disease, and able to care for a child over 21, financially stable. This does go through some of those myths about things like, well, we already have kids, or, I don't have a giant house, things like that. But if you go back up here to become a foster parent, and then it kind of explains, okay, here's how we do it. We ask you to do certain things. We go through your house, we do your training, and then it does have a brochure you can download, but you can also just fill this out. And it just asks, okay, some birth dates, family status, as in like we're divorced, I'm, single, married, separated, partnered, how many parents are in the home, and then your contact stuff. And we just say, okay, are you interested more in fostering a boy, a girl, siblings? How'd you hear about us? Click that you're not a robot and submit.
Very, very perfect. So then how do you get matched? How does OCY match you to children?
Okay, so if we're talking about foster care, it's pretty easy. So some agencies go through like any hour of the day. We just do between like 8 and 5. So kind of that first shift working hours. They contact us and they say things like, hi, I have a 12-year-old girl who's, being removed due to parental drug use and deplorable home conditions. She is in 7th grade and does not have any outstanding medical needs or take daily medication. She does see a therapist, and mostly for depression. And then you say, okay. And so I then look at my list of foster parents and I see who might match up based on, again, what they need. Sometimes you have a kiddo who needs to be, maybe they're part of a sibling group, so we want to try to keep those together. Or sometimes they need something like, you mentioned they might be medically fragile, so they need, a little more care. There's really, people kind of sometimes just don't realize that you've got teenagers coming into care, you've got all ages, you've got babies who are just born coming directly home from the hospital into foster care, everywhere in between.
And young kids that are, hopefully you can get them in the same school district so that there's not that big change there too.
Yeah,
there's lots of thought that goes into it.
Yeah. So we kind of try to match up based on that. And then we let OCY know, we call our foster parents and we say things like, hey, Wendy, I've got a placement. And you can tell us, yes or no, and you don't get penalized for either answer. So you can say, you hear a little bit about the child and you can say, I think that's more than I can do right now. Or you can say, oh my gosh, Martine, my in-laws are coming in for the weekend. I've got this, wedding I'm going to. I just can't possibly take a placement today. That's fine. You can say like, yeah, I think I'd be willing to do this. I would like to know a little bit more about maybe the schooling thing. So I've got a couple questions there. So you can kind of get some information. And if you say yes, great. If you say no, that's fine. Like I said, you don't get penalized. You don't get put to the bottom of the list or anything. And then we let OCY know, okay, here are families who would be willing to take that child in. And then OCY makes the decision based on any number of things, including, like you said, maybe if they can keep them in the same school district, or if they, would like to get them away from a certain part of town, or whatever it happens to be. And then we just call the family back and say, okay, they chose you and expect a call like any minute now. And, sometimes honestly, it is a right away thing where they need an immediate placement like that day. Other times it might be a thing where you have a chance to maybe have a few meetings with the kid first and they can come over and you can kind of transition first. So it might be a couple of weeks before they're fully there. Sometimes, especially if they're in a placement facility like a shelter, you can meet them and see just, is this going to work? You can kind of see like, okay, well, I want to meet them and they meet you, and you kind of try to see like, okay, well, what are they like? And sometimes that helps you to know that as well.
Yes, and also you can have some children that are there for a day, and sometimes they could be there for a year. You just never ever know. It's all a big surprise, and that's okay too. That's part of the fun of it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that people don't realize is that if there's not a foster home for the kid to go into, they will go into a shelter, and it's through no fault of their own. It's just that if there's not a placement, they have to be somewhere. So sometimes you have kids as young as like 5 in a shelter. And that's not a great situation. I mean, shelter is just not a replacement for a family. So that's why we really need to have foster families to be sure that, the approximately 10 kids who come into care every week, that they have a place to go.
Perfect. And we're going to wrap this up real quick here. And I'm going to let everybody know that in the link, there is a Survey Monkey. Because we are federally granted, we are asking you to fill this out. It helps us with our data collection on making sure that the quality of our programming is excellent. So if you all don't mind taking that survey, if you don't take it now, we will absolutely email it to you. Martine, if you have any documentation or any flyers that you would like us to send out to the people that were on today's W4, we can do that as well. If you have any more questions, please call Martine. Once again, what's your phone number?
Oh, let me put it in the chat.
Oh, it's going in the chat. And her email is in the chat, so that if you have any questions or you want to look more into being a respite provider and get your little toes wet, or if you want to dive straight on in, Family Services of Northwest Pennsylvania is a great place to look and be part of. It's like their own little family. So thank you for coming on Wonderful Wednesdays with Wendy. I hope to see you again very soon. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Wendy. I appreciate it.